Welcome, everyone, to our latest episode of the Train Like a Trooper podcast. We have two very special guests with us today, Trooper Mark Walters and Lieutenant Stephen Cornell. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
These are our resident firearms experts, and today we're talking about firearms and the patrol. And we kind of want to start out by talking a little bit about the history and the progression. You guys know all the history of OHP and firearms.
Let me say something real quick. I think that when I think of firearms and I thought about doing this podcast, you guys were the first two names that came to my mind. So you guys have been involved with the training program as long as I can possibly, my whole career. And when other guys talk about the training program, your names always get brought up as being an influence in how they train or what they do now. So that's why you're here, and we're super thankful you guys agreed to do this, reluctantly against your will.
Well, good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
They like to say they're here under duress, but
Yeah.
they showed up willingly.
We're thankful, and they've got a ton of knowledge, and I'm looking
Yes.
forward to hearing the history side of it as well as kind of what we're doing now. So bring it full circle.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll do our best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So going to the history of this, how did we start out with our firearms program, Mark?
Well, I like to start out, I'm going to just default to my history being from when I started with the patrol, which was in 1984. And in 1984, we were issued 681 Smith & Wesson revolvers, and we carried them in a leather, we call them open top holster, and there was no retention at all. We were not permitted at that time to even carry speed loaders, and so we've progressed from that to what we have today, which is a level 3 style holster that requires several manipulations to get the gun out of the holster, and of course we're carrying some automatic pistols. So in 1984, it was revolvers, and we kept with that. Would you like for me just to kind of explain to you how?
Yeah.
My understanding is from 84 until 94, well, it's not my understanding, that's a fact, we carried revolvers. And I do know that before I came on the patrol, they were carrying and issued a Model 65 Smith & Wesson, which is a K-frame revolver. Some of this information doesn't make sense to anyone except for people that know the guns. And we went to a little bit bigger frame, which is an L frame, which is a 681. And then in 94, the department transitioned to a 6-hour P220 in 45 caliber, 45 ACP, and that was our first semi-automatic issued pistol. And we carried that for several years, and then in the late 90s, we transitioned to a 6-hour 226 in the 357, and I don't remember the exact year. Was that what were you carrying when you came on in 94?
I came on in 95, but the 220.
The 220
Yeah,
still?
and I believe, and we were the first academy to be issued 220s.
Okay, so 94. So do you remember when we went to the 226? Was that the late 90s?
I don't remember.
I do know that for a fact that in 2003 to about 2006, we went to what they called a DAC 6-hour, which was the 226, 357, and it was an all double action trigger pull. Mm-hmm. And there was no decocker on it, and we had that. Now, me personally, for some reason, I really liked that gun. It was like shooting a revolver.
That's what I got issued, and I really liked it.
What year was that?
It was 2006.
Okay, so speak up more. So the 2006, I know that we were issuing the DACs. We did it for about 3 or 4 or 5 academies, something like that. I personally like that, but I believe I was about the only person on the highway patrol that liked that pistol. Most people like the double single action better. But for whatever reason, I really liked it, and I carried several of those throughout the years and really liked it. And then we progressed to, that was, I know we were in what was that, 2004? We had I know that we went to 2004, we went to the double single in the 357 for sure. And then I think it was about 2018 we transitioned to the 320, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But and that was when we went to the 9mm. Mm-hmm. I think the big controversy then was transitioning to a 9mm, getting away from the 357. A lot of people were opposed to that transition. Some of the field troopers didn't like the 9mm, thinking about going to it. I think most of those people being convinced it's probably been a good idea. And then here recently, within the last year or so, we transitioned to the Glock 47. So that's our first Glock pistol. We went to that, and I think most of the field have those issued to them by now.
So let me take it back to 1984, not to date you here, but almost half a century ago. Mm-hmm. What did firearms training look like in 84?
What I remember going through the academy, we actually shot quite a bit. We shot multiple times. It was different in that we were just discussing this recently about back then, if you wanted to be ready and at your ready position, your finger was on the trigger. Yeah. And if you didn't have your finger on the trigger, well, you could not be ready. Mm-hmm. And that would be the most major training point from today, because today, if your finger's on the trigger and you're not in the process of shooting, of course we frown on that. Yeah. And and also the holster manufacturers. Just a drastic change. I would say the two biggest changes from 84 to now is, of course, it's a semi-automatic, but as far as a training thing, it's how to train to get the gun out of the holster, which is completely different than what we were doing in 84 because there was zero retention. Literally, a trooper could bend over and the gun could fall out of the holster.
So we talk a lot about weapons retention. We train a lot on weapons retention. Do you think that's kind of where it came from, is the having no retention on your holster and making sure that you're always protecting your gun side? You know where your gun side's at all times.
Yeah, I think that it's also made us safer for the troopers out there. I think that if we were still carrying the same type of technology we had back in the 80s, there would be more troopers that were going to get shot with their own pistols. Yeah. And with this retention that we have in the holsters now has diminished that some.
I see. The training itself in 1984 and then the late 80s, pretty static?
Yep, very static. There's hip shooting. I do recall that. There was hip shooting, and we were from about 7 yards and in, you are not supposed to use your sights. You are always supposed to be looking over your gun, and hip shooting, again, drastically different from what we train today. We want you to use your sights anytime that you can, and we focus on using your sights as much as we can. Yeah. And so it's the shooting was mostly a single target, wasn't multiple. We did very little training around cars. I think we train around cars a lot more. Well, there's no thinking that we do. We train around cars a lot more today than we did back then.
Yeah. We can't talk about Oklahoma firearms tactics without talking about Dan Colmes. Mm-hmm. What kind of influence I know Dan died just a few years before you got on patrol. Mm-hmm. He died in 76. He served from 1953 to 1976. What influence did Dan bring to the patrol, and how did that change how we train?
I think that his influence was still in the department in 1984. I happened to see Dan Colmes at Shepherd Mall when I was about a 14-year-old kid. Myself and a friend of mine, we saw him just doing a presentation that he was doing at Shepherd Mall. It was what he spoke about and how he used the gun was very similar to what we were doing in my academy. You were shooting from the hip, you were shooting There was focus on getting that first shot off, and again, you weren't using your sights. You're just kind of orienting your body towards the target. And I thought probably wasn't as good as I could have been if I would have been able to use my sights. And but that was not the emphasis then.
Yeah. For those that don't know who Dan Colmes is, tell us a little bit about what Dan did in the patrol and what he was known for.
Dan was I guess you could call him a trick shooter, and he was a very good trick shooter. He was a World War II veteran. He was from that greatest generation, and he came from probably some hard stock. And he was, it seemed like a very decent person. I never shook his hand. I just saw him on a presentation. I've seen videos of him on presentation. And he was, just seemed like a decent American and real pro highway patrol. And I think that he promoted the highway patrol very well by doing this demonstration around the state that he put in conjunction with. It was he would explain that as fast as he could shoot these cups or whatever he was shooting at, you could have an accident that quick. And so he rolled it all into kind of a safety talk and explained that these accidents happen rapidly and quickly. People die in a heartbeat, and more people will die from a drunk driver crossing the lane line hitting a family head on than, say, a bad guy with a pistol. And he kind of promoted that message around the state. And he trained a lot of police officers. He felt that first shot was a very critical shot, and it was important to be able to do it quickly. And that's why he designed the holsters that he did. In fact, I brought one, and it was this was one of his holsters, and you can see there's zero retention to it. The only difference between a Highway Patrol's holster and this one is we had a hole right here that accommodated a leather thong that you would put around a hammer. This holster was made by him, and he doesn't even have a place for a leather thong. So
Wow.
He apparently did not like any retention.
Was he an inspiration to you for joining the patrol?
I think he was. I think he was. He came across very professional, and he came across with a very good message that cars are deadly, and but he also and firearms in the wrong hands are deadly, but firearms in the right hands were good tools, and that was kind of that was his message.
It's
What was the thong commonly referred as?
Widowmaker. If I remember, that's what I remember. And they would say that if you and people would die, they would tie certain knots in it so they could flick it with a thumb. They'd flick it on the outside, and it was. But if you had the thong on it, and you tried to pull the gun out of the holster, you couldn't get your gun out, and that's why they call it the Widowmaker.
I had to write these notes down, so I'm going to be looking at them here. But it said that he could shoot an aspirin out of the air with a 30-06, which is highly impressive. And he could shoot 50 rounds out of a Thompson submachine gun into a playing card in just a matter of a second or so. That's pretty wild.
And the video I saw that I thought was impressive, I did not see this at Shepherd Mall. His presentation at Shepherd Mall when I was a young kid was all with pistols and blanks. But I saw a video of him with an M14 rifle, which is a .308, and he did the same presentation on a card and just tore out the center of a card. I think it was an ace of spades with this 20-round magazine off of an M14, and I'm like, that's pretty impressive.
Is there a period of history, whether it happened in Oklahoma or not, and I've kind of got one in mind, and I'm kind of curious if you think the same thing, where we started to really change our tactics and how we went to more of less of a static into more of a dynamic training situation?
I think when we started changing into the semi-automatics, that is a natural progression.
Yeah.
We started doing more movements. Again, also, you have to say that, like today, it's pervasive. The country is pervasive with firearms trainers from all over the country. A lot of them have either high-level police experience or high-level military experience, and they're opening up businesses, and they're creating businesses that they will teach us trainers what they know, what they learned the hard way, and they'll do that for about $1,000 a week or more, maybe $2,000 a week, and they'll teach you everything you can. So the knowledge is, I think, more pervasive now. We can learn a lot of from both our police and military veterans, and you can literally, or you can turn on the YouTube and you can figure it out right there, to going, okay, maybe there's a better way to skin this cat. So that, I think we realized, I definitely by the 90s, that we need to start putting more movement in our shooting, that we needed to start focusing on than just standing still and shooting bullets into a target.
Yeah. I can think of two incidents that come to my mind that I've been taught throughout my career in law enforcement. One was the California Highway Patrol shooting when they were putting their rounds back in their pocket as opposed to tactically reloading. And the second was the LA, where we were just outgunned over there, and law enforcement was outgunned. And that's kind of where we went to like more rifle training and more long gun training so we can match what we're seeing on the road. Lieutenant Cornell, how has dynamic shooting changed in our law enforcement training now? What does it look like for us now?
Well, historically and even today, that our course of fire, or our qualification course, is a direct descendant off of the PPC course. Which, if you've ever shot the PPC course, it is a challenging course, but it's like, I believe it's what's PPC mean? Police.
Practical police.
Practical
course,
police
I think.
Course, but it's it is a bullseye shooting course, and I mean even our cleat course today is remnants of that. It's changed a little bit through the years, but just how it has changed, that there's such an emphasis now, and there are so many good instructors on the highway patrol now, and literally they're going across the nation to receive training from competitors and from people that have been in gunfights, whether it's law enforcement or military, and also, but there are so many instructors across the state that not only are they going out of the state to receive training, they're going out of state to provide training. So we really have a wealth of knowledge and ability as instructors on the highway patrol. And so, and if there's one thing that I would say that it's really changed, is the performance based, to where trying to find time, whether it's on your draw or a reload, and it's really performance driven on a bunch of it, and like I said, there are so many guys that are really skilled in that area. And before it really wasn't like that. And Mark and I believe Todd Fenimore were one of the first ones that I knew. And they'd been going to classes for decades. I got on in '95, and when did you go to API, to Thunder Ranch? And
86.
In '86, he went out to Thunder Ranch, which was
wasn't Thunder Ranch.
Not Thunder Ranch.
That was Gunsight.
Gunsight.
Yeah.
Under Colonel Cooper, who was like the grandfather, or the start of modern combat pistol training.
The Hoist Gracie of the firearms world.
He was, and and Mark is literally, he's being a little bit whatever. He's been to all those guys. He's been he's seen him teach, and all the old school guys that before there were. Literally, you can get on the internet, and there are thousands of trainers that will gladly take your money and teach you something. Well, back in the day, that there were just a few, and Mark's been to them, and so that was kind of and I caught on to that some way, in that, and I started wanting to go to schools, and like in my area, that nobody had ever gone to any outside training. Well, now that I guarantee you that every month, if not every week, there is a trooper going to a school somewhere to learn something. And and some of it is everything is cyclical. That we think we've like discovered a new gem, and it's just cyclical. They used to teach that 30 years ago, and it's come full circle. And some of it is truly fresh ideas on stuff. So that the skill base of the instructors and of the troopers have really gone outside of we've called it institutionally inbred, to where we only learned what we taught. Mm-hmm. And so the highway patrol, we kept it in a little circle, whether it was cleat training or whatever. Well, Mark and some others, they kind of broke that mold and started introducing, and it's just a grassroots thing that the more schools I went to, the more schools other people that they went to, and it's just become really beneficial to firearms training in the highway patrol and really the state, because these guys are training. Matt Valines and Derek Fry just got back from going to Idaho to teach a sniper school. Well, that's pretty far-reaching influence that they're going to Idaho and teaching the things that they've learned, and so that's beneficial to law enforcement across the nation. And it just wasn't that way, even in '95 when I went through. But
so I think it's safe to say that the cadets that are coming into our academies now are getting the most top-notch firearms training that you can possibly get anywhere in the country.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
I think the instructors give them everything they can, and that's what, as Stephen said, what makes it interesting is if you have a cadre of 8 instructors, I'll bet you 7 of them have been through I don't want to call it advanced training, but they've sought training on their own dime. They went out of state. Usually, sometimes there's very good instructors that come to this state, and they've paid their own money to attend training. So there's always fresh ideas. There's always something that we're willing to look at and say, okay, maybe that's a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's I think that it's that going back to the history, I would say that when we first started carrying semi-autos in '94, that the strong influence was Gunsight API. Jeff Cooper, that was a strong influence, not only because I went there in '86, not because of me, but because the guy that was running cleat at that time was Glenn McIntyre. And Glenn McIntyre was strong. Jerry Kaysen, our chief of the highway patrol, he had been to Gunsight. I'm trying to think of someone else off the top of my head. I can't remember. But there's multiple people who've been to Gunsight. So there was I think what we were teaching in '94, there was a lot of Gunsight influence.
Yeah.
And then of course we haven't even talked about the rifles, but I think the rifles, there was a strong influence of Thunder Ranch, and then initially, and then everyone started learning from other individuals, and then it came back to what it is today, which is kind of a lot of information from different sources, to include our own individuals here in the state, and it all comes together into a pretty good package.
And that he mentioned the rifle training, that he thinks it was influenced by Thunder Ranch. No, it was influenced by Thunder Ranch because he went to Thunder Ranch, because when we were issued, I was issued the the collapsible stock or folding stock stainless steel Ruger Mini 14 5.56 20-round mag. No, we had 30-round magazines, but anyway, and that literally. You had to put your finger inside the trigger guard just in front of the trigger to move the gun from safe to fire. So really, kind of it was an unsafe weapon as far as our current safety rules would dictate. But we were issued pencil barrel fixed sights carry handle AR-15s. I think in 2000. Well. And Mark was there, I was there, we went to the range, and all the instructors were there, and they kind of gave us these guns, and we're like, well, what are we going to teach? And I wish we'd had a video of all of everything that was the ideas that came up. We had Marines wanting to do it one way, Army guys wanting to do it one way, some guys that from in the sticks in Oklahoma, they wanted to do it a different way, and we had no standardized operating system for the AR-15, and I worked with some guys out west, and they were civilian, a lawyer and a process server, and they kind of I don't know where I think Thunder Ranch, Gunsight had a rifle program, and they'd been out there, and they kind of had their thing that was kind of standardized. Well, Todd, who went to Thunder Ranch?
So myself and Todd, and then we came back, and Tim Tipton, Kirk Lipke.
Danny go?
I don't think it was Danny.
Barry Clay?
Barry Clay, and I went up to Thunder Ranch up in Oregon, but in the Texas one, I believe it was Kirk and Tim, and gosh, I know there was a third individual, but I cannot remember off the top of my head. But they went down there, and then we started teaching Thunder Ranch.
Well, he
curriculum.
They came back, and we were at an academy or something teaching, and I don't remember. I remember it as Edmond. I think he remembers it as some other place, but we both got Alzheimer's a little bit. So, but I remember out in the parking lot, we got an AR-15 out, and he's like, "Man, I've got to show you this." And so that was the the beginnings and the birthing of our current rifle program, and then it became
standardized,
and we tweaked it, and we got, and I say this core group kind of grew, and everybody kind of drew information from different trainers, be it Paul Howe or Kyle Lamb or 20 other people, and so everybody had their input in it, and really that's where we are today with specifically the rifle program. And and the rifle has changed also. We've I think just this year, last year, we finally got all of those, and I call them pencil barrel fixed carry handle rifles out of the field and issued something a little bit better. Some of them. They all have capabilities to put a red dot sight on top of it, or whatever the trooper chooses. But so that has gotten much better, and this is it's so the current academy, they are really going to get something a little special, and they're going to get, and so they're Daniel Defense 11.5-inch AR-15s that are suppressed. And come with a red dot sight, an aim point sight, and a good flashlight, and so that's that's a first. And
Speaking of the academy, you guys have both been instructors forever. What does the academy training program look like from the beginning? If we're dealing with pistols, shotgun, are we still teaching shotgun and then rifle?
Oh gosh, we have to go. We have to treat this as a basic, or I say a basic academy. Like they've had zero training on a firearm, and it is, you talk about bare bones, starting from the bare basics on just the principles of marksmanship, and we build on it. I think we build on it pretty rapidly, but the rifle and the pistol are both that same style that Jason Ross, he has them at the they call them Weapons Wednesdays, where they'll talk about nomenclature and tearing it apart, and do some dry skills, so that when they get to the range, that it's not the first time they've ever touched it. And those Weapon Wednesdays or dry skill days where they do, and Mark has been up there on a bunch of those, and he can attest that those are work, because they are heavy with. There's a lot of stuff to, and I say address or fix or whatever. There's a lot of stuff to do. But that time is very, it's a good investment so when we do go to the range and we really start shooting, that that's we're way down the road as far as gun manipulations and handling them safely.
So do we still do a week of pistol, a week of shotgun, and a week of rifle?
Well, let's go back. You wanted to learn about history of firearms.
Mm-hmm.
The history of firearms is that it's been tough because we don't have our own facilities, and that's a very valid point. Anytime you start talking about firearms training and the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, the first information you need to realize, we don't have our own training facility. Now, my understanding is that the legislature was very gracious, and the governor signed a bill, I believe, last session and the session before, that I think that is going to be solved. So I've been with this agency for over 40 years and never had an Oklahoma Highway Patrol training range. That's going to be changed. I believe in northeastern Oklahoma County, probably maybe sometime next year, they're going to have their own fire. The Highway Patrol is going to finally have its own firing range. So what happens during the academy is in my time of helping to teach, I've taught at, I don't know, probably close to 10 different ranges. So we've even taught it at Stephen's house,
Mm-hmm.
because he has a nice range at his house. And so we've trained as far as I've trained. One time we had an academy, I do not remember what number it was, but we had to bus down to Pauls Valley. Had to bus down to Pauls Valley every morning, do our firearms training, and bus back. That's the worst that we had. So much of your training time is being occupied by driving time. Oklahoma County's been very gracious with us out here because it's just east of the training center where we're at now. They've allowed us to use their range a lot over the years, so we've used their range a lot. We've used Edmond PD's range, so we've used Yukon Police Department's range. We've used lots of ranges around here to accomplish the task. What happens, though, is certain ranges allow certain activities and some don't. They'd say maybe one range they don't want you to shoot steel on it. Maybe another range they don't want you to drive cars, or you're incapable of driving cars on the actual range. So that changes the training that's going to occur during that course. And so we have to be where we like to have everything. It'd be really nice if we had everything in a clear-cut lesson plan that we could hand that to any firearms instructor. They could go and conduct that training. Well, that's not the way it is, because we may be restricted by what we can do at that particular range, or we may have more latitude at this particular range, get more movement training here that we can't do at another range. So there is no cooker cutter kind of that we can say this is what we do at every academy, because I will tell you that every academy is slightly different, because the range availability sometimes is wide open and we can get as much as we want, and then sometimes it's more restricted and we maybe have to push more students on a range to accommodate it, or whatever that may be.
I want to touch on what you just talked about a little bit there, and Lieutenant Cornell, talk about what you built at your place and why.
Okay. So we were dealing with the same thing out in western Oklahoma, that we could shoot at the Clinton Police Department range, but we couldn't shoot rifles. We had to go to Burns Flat and shoot rifles. So I just had a piece of property, and I saw a need, and started pushing dirt with an old tractor, and you know, I and Mark and I were talking about this, that really what a blessing that has been to me and others, but definitely to me, that I've had so many good times out, at my house doing firearms training for, all kind of different, law enforcement, and, we've had different trainers out there, but it has really worked out and been beneficial to me that we did that. And it was just out of a need that, hey, the Highway Patrol did not have a range out in Weatherford. And whenever, like I'm sure that a lot of people feel my pain on this, that when you go to a different person's range, and regardless if you tore it up or not, when you leave and something's torn up, or they show up in a week or two and something's torn up, that we always get blamed for it. So, when something's torn up at my house, I just blame Trooper John Jones, because I know he's been out there doing stuff. But kind of back to your question about how does it look now, because I know there were probably in your academy you had a full week of rifle, full week of pistol, full week of shotgun, and we have changed that, and it kind of, I believe it started with what we call the COVID Academy, and we have a very complex problem, and Todd Fenimore put together this rotating system that really worked well, to where you would have a starter block on like a day and a half or 2 days on one gun, and then move to the next and move to the next, and what that did, and then maybe generally the time frame in the academy is 3 weeks of firearms. Well, so they'd have these starter blocks, and then you would have a full 3 days on one weapon. Well, like in the following week or whatever. Well, what that allowed, it was dually beneficial to the students and the instructors, is because when you went to the rifle range, well, you just taught rifle for 3 weeks. Well, so I never really got to teach pistol. I like teaching pistol. Well, now that the instructors get to teach all of them, and also, it's debatable sometimes when I hear people talk that retention is better. Some people are just don't retain stuff, but for most people, that being able to touch the weapon, each weapon, all 3 weeks, the retention, and the weapon Wednesdays, when you just go out there for 1 week, and it's intensive on the pistol, and you pack the pistol up, and then you go to the rifle, that we personally don't think the retention of information is as good as if you can spread it out across the three. Really, what we would like to do and talked about, and maybe it's possible with the new range, is that they touch their firearms, like really go shoot every week throughout the academy, and we think, man, what would be the retention level of that if we could get that done, that accomplished, and so that's we hope to do that.
Yeah. How big of a deal is it for the Highway Patrol to get their own
Oh my gosh!
range? You've been here more than 4 decades, and this will be the first time.
No, this is a big deal, and especially to be able to put, if my understanding of a couple of the meetings I've been able to be in, that if they can incorporate the driving and the shooting into one area where they can literally drive from the driving track and now be on a shooting range doing drills or scenarios right there, and then move and have the next one come up. That's where I think the retention will really skyrocket, because I think that when you start using pistol, now you've transitioned to a rifle, and you're doing all that in and around a car and having to drive the car, and maybe have to drive certain ways, and the way that troopers have to drive sometimes when they're trying to catch bad guys, and all that being put together, and then progress that into some defensive tactics where they could literally transition from live fire, now they're at training, using training weapons. It's going to be, I think, phenomenal for what the future troopers are going to be doing compared to what we did.
So, like the past academies that we've been dealing with, like with Oklahoma County and Jones PD, their range, and they're very gracious, but they have business to tend to also. So, like this year, Jason Ross and the others are having to logistically figure out. The curriculum is we have a playbook per se of the curriculum that we're going to teach, and in what order it's going to be taught, but the logistics of it and the efficiency of it really becomes a problem. Poor Kirk Lemke, all he does is drive around in a big panel van or truck or whatever, delivering supplies literally all over Oklahoma City. Some pistol ammo over here and rifle ammo over here, and so this year that we can have one range for a couple days, and then we have to be off that range and go to somewhere else. Well, that generally, if we're on a range for a week, Well, we shoot all week, and then we end up having to pick up, 40,000 pieces of brass off of that range one day.
Mm-hmm.
We always, at Friday at noon, we just start cleaning ranges. Well, when you start having to jockey ranges back and forth, well, you have to clean ranges daily, which goes into, the efficiency and the time we get to actually shoot. They're not there to pick up brass; they're there to shoot. So this is going to be a game changer to actually have our own range.
How many rounds do you think that cadets shoot in the firearms program over the course of it?
Well, I think we figured around 3,000 rifle rounds per academy. I don't know what the pistol was.
No, I really don't know those numbers.
Collectively, they would have to shoot 5,000 to 6,000 rounds in the course of 3 weeks.
I remember in my academy those days being very, very long days, getting out there in the morning and not getting home till the evening, and then whatever the tax had in store for you that evening, and then waking up and doing it the next day.
Yeah, doing it again.
Yeah.
Have you all heard from, and I know we've only had a couple lateral academies, but you talked about assuming that these, officers that are coming in already have a lot of knowledge. Have you gotten feedback from them afterwards, like, wow, this training is vastly better, different than what I've had before?
It's usually always different. There's parts of it that are different, and it's what we've seen is that we can't assume that everyone's going to know. If we have a class of lateral that say 30 students, and we cannot assume that all 30 of those students are ready to jump out there and start training without starting back at ground zero and just doing a building block till we get them to where we can really start doing some good training. Now, I will tell you that some of these groups, you move to that training cycle where you're really getting some good training in. You may move a little bit quicker, but you're always going to have to start back down at ground zero, no matter what.
Because I heard your question differently. Yes, we've got what I think your question was, that we have gotten some really positive feedback from people that have been trained elsewhere. Yeah. And it's surprising to me a little bit is that some of the most positive feedback, especially with the rifle, it comes from military. Mm-hmm. That they're like, oh my goodness, I've been in the military for X amount of years and we've never seen it present, we've never done it like this, and this is really good. So, and this is to me, this is always, as a firearms instructor, is the, it's the big question is are we valid? Are we doing stuff that matters? Is it, is this fantasy land, or is this really stuff that that is beneficial and is real? And the feedback that we get, it is positive, and because, and I understand that some of these people come from, or where they've experienced firearms training before, they are definitely institutional inbred, and the training that they received is the same training that their firearms instructor received. It might be 30 years ago, and it looks the same. It looks like a PPC course, and it's very rigid. Mark and I joke sometimes about we've been told this we've heard other instructors from other places say this, and it is echoed by their students, is that they will tell them, don't think. We will tell you what to think, when to think it, and we're like, wow, that's not very real. And so safety is number one, running a safe range, balancing this risk benefit thing, and but allowing some some free thinking and some decision making on the range. And as far as the techniques change, it goes here and there, but as far as the mindset and the philosophy behind how we run a range, that I believe they appreciate being treated like grown adults, instead of like a recruit class, like you with a bunch of 18. I've never been in the Army, but you have 400 18-year-old guys you needed to teach how to run a rifle. Well, I'm sure you have to run that a little differently. Well, So we get positive feedback from that.
Something I like about our program that we teach is, number one, it's standardized across the state. So you guys do a great job here in Oklahoma City and getting that information dispersed out through the instructors across one side. So firearms training in Miami looks the same as it does in Altus. And I'm thankful for that, because when guys transfer, they go to move, work somewhere else, and they work with a guy. Now they're all on the same page. Everybody's been trained to the same standard. And the second thing is that you guys take situations that we've been in, troopers have been in, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, and we typically design some type of training around that. We learn from our successes and our mistakes. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes.
I think we strive to, and that's and that's where I was getting ready to say that several individuals that have been involved in officer-involved shootings, they're not shy to, if they thought that something was detrimental to their training, they would let you know. But they also let you know that, okay, that's the path we need to stay on. I've heard that a couple of times where people have said that they thought that whatever path Stephen was teaching with a rifle was a good, valid path, and because it allowed them to be successful with defending themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important, of course, also, because that's what the end user needs.
Yeah.
Would you guys say, firearms training is probably the most important training that you get in the academy?
I've always thought it was, and it is the most important, because when you figure that the trooper's using a firearm, everything else is secondary. And so therefore I think it needs to have a lot of emphasis. Of course, in my mind, I wish it had more emphasis, just because I'm greedy that way. But I think that it's not only what we give them. I think, and this is what I think we've tried to explain to the students, is we don't expect them to be perfect in that week or 2 weeks or whatever. What we do expect them to know exactly how to do it perfect. We want them to strive to be as good as they can in those weeks, and some of them do leave there perfect, but at least they know how to start practicing, because I've always said where the real training occurs is the day they graduate from the academy, and they have to start training on their own for the rest of their life. And so that's that's where I think it's been demonstrated multiple times that there's troopers out here that, under their own dedication, they've gone out and they've continued their training. They took the information that we presented to them, and then they went out on their own, found their own range, their own ability, furnished their own bullets, and they continue to train. And when the time comes of the situation that's captured on an in-car camera, you can see they've performed very well. And it'd be nice to say, oh, I gave them that information. No, that was done because that individual trooper went out and took his own time, effort, and energy, and continued to train on his own.
To save his own life if needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the stance of the department has changed on that drastically through the years also, because it's been recent. Within the last 3 or 4 years, that the department actually paid for me to go to class. All the rest of them that I paid for, and I just thought that's the way it was. Some of them, I even bought my own ammunition, and they were. I always had good captains that they would at least let me charge time. But a lot of the travel, all that was on us. But recently, that especially with ammo, that if people want to go to school, they supply the ammo. A lot of times they'll provide travel. I've been to several schools. Now they may not have paid the tuition, but we've got a car to go to. We drove a car to Utah. Is that when you got stopped for speeding? Anyway, it was in New Mexico. But anyway.
Oh, I might need to hear that story.
Yeah. So, but the department's stance, and I truly believe that they realize that is beneficial to send guys to experience other things and bring stuff back, because so when I first became a firearms instructor, we had a guy that was he was on the TAC team early, and dang, he was close hold with his info, and it's like, hey, why don't you teach us something, and he wouldn't, and I never understood that, but the guys that are going out now, oh gosh, there are no secrets, and whatever knowledge they have, they are willing and they want to get that knowledge and that whatever out there, and I appreciate that they're not going out and getting this info so that they can just be better than you. They truly want to teach you something, so that ultimately what you just said, so that hey, troopers can do better when they have to shoot someone or someone trying to shoot them, that they do better.
So when you started going through, this is obviously a huge financial investment when you started training and you started going to the classes that you went to. What drove that passion to be a better shooter?
Mark Walters did, 100% did. He was going to schools, and we went to some schools together, and we would, he'd want to go to, and he'd go to one. He'd say, "Yeah, you got to go to that," and so I don't know how many years. I don't know. He's been on a long time, since 86 or whatever. Well, we just went to the school last year. Well, a lot of people at that stage in their career would not. Number one, they don't want the stress, and they don't want the putting themselves out there, and and the competitiveness, and just all of that. That he's always been, that I think he said he's put it to me like that. That's what helped him keep his edge through however many years he was a trooper, and so he totally inspired me to do some of that, and so
let's talk about our current system that we have now. Can you talk about the transition from iron sights, which I'm super grateful for the experience that we've had shooting iron sights, to where we're at now and shooting a red dot?
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's what I like. Number one is the department allowed the training to be 2 days. I've heard of departments that were transitioning in 1 day. I've even heard of departments that are transitioning in an afternoon. A morning session, an evening session. We're getting 2 days. We're allocating. I think it's 1,000 rounds, and personally, it was not enough transition time for me. When I transitioned from an iron-sighted gun to a optic-sighted gun, it took more effort on my part. It took a lot of dry fire skills, and I've always been a strong advocate of dry fire skills, and that it's going to. I think it's going to require the individual troopers that have done nothing but shot iron sights, that they're going to have to continue. That 2 days is not enough. It's enough to give them the information, but it's really going to be incumbent upon them to then take that information and continue training. And that's what I've always advocated. That's what makes it interesting being a trooper. The coolest thing about being a trooper, I think, or one of the coolest thing, is when you're a police officer, you have a lineup. You have to be at the agency at a certain time, ready to start taking calls as soon as lineup is over with. Well, as a trooper, you can be 10-8, literally walk right back in your house, and then if you don't have a call waiting for you, and you can do your dry fire session right there. You can do about a 15-minute dry fire session at the beginning of your shift. And what better prepares you to use your gun than a little bit of dry fire session? Mm-hmm. And then at the end of your shift, you come home. Again, you don't have to go by the station, turn in reports. You go back to your home. And you go back to your home about 15 minutes early, 20 minutes early, and do a dry fire session at the end of your shift. If you did that for twice a day for 30 days, you'd probably have what you need for the ability to handle that new optic sight versus the iron sights. I wish everyone would invest that time, and really it's not even their time, it's state time. That the state, there's not a supervisor or troop commander that would care if that's what you were doing at the beginning and end of your shift.
Mm-hmm. That's been I think that process started in March, and Jason Ross, he's got several teams that go across the state and teach and do I think it's the Red Dot transition class or something, a 2-day thing to include a night fire. Well, since March, I believe they have 50 people left, 50 pistols that they've got left. They have left to issue out, and wow, they've really done a big job. That whole team, they've gone all over the state. John Jones, I know I think he spent the night. I don't know. He spent the night on a cot a couple places, and in Troop in Troop headquarters across the state. They've done a big job by getting those out. And Mark, he was resistant to the Red Dot site at first, and let me tell you that if anyone is hesitant to see the validity of these Red Dot sites, Mark I believe he is a true believer. Now, it took a lot of reps and a lot of ammunition, but it is a good piece of equipment. That really what the department is issuing us right now is it is in my 30 years or whatever, it is by far the best. It's the best set of equipment that we've ever been issued. We're getting good rifles with Red Dot sights and good handguns with Red Dot sights, good flashlights, good gear, good holsters, and we kind of bypassed the shotgun. That the lethal shotgun is no longer a thing on the highway patrol.
We've gone to less lethal.
Yeah, we've gone to less lethal, or kinetic energy devices, or whatever, delivers, whatever, KEDs as they call it. And so and we've gone to a different brand of shotgun on that, a Mossberg. I don't even know the number of it, but we've kind of gotten away from. We don't buy 870 Remington 870s anymore. We buy Mossbergs.
500.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still had to have the 870, but they give us good equipment to go do our job.
Mm-hmm.
They really do.
Did you ever think when you were shooting a slingshot back in 1984 that you'd be shooting an optic now?
Yeah. No, I mean, we didn't even understand it. Didn't even understand the whole science behind it, or the technology was not even. I don't even know. The first time I looked through an optic sight was probably on a rifle, and it was easier to transition to an optic sight on a rifle. This transition to a pistol, a little bit more difficult. But now that I've done it, I like it. And with the caveat, it requires more maintenance, and that's always the problem. As our guns become more technical, it's going to require more maintenance. Yeah. It's going to require more focus. That where the old revolver from 1984, you put 6 bullets in it, slap her shut, put it in the holster, it's good to go. It's not going to be that simple anymore.
Yeah.
So, Lieutenant Southall, both of these guys seem pretty humble, but I mean, there's a reason that we had them on this podcast to talk about this. You guys have a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience that the patrol as a whole has really benefited from.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said earlier, when I think about firearms, these are the two guys I think about that come to my mind first. And there's plenty of others that are super knowledgeable, and we're lucky to have a whole array of guys that they had mentioned earlier that have been through so many training courses and so many classes that bring that information back to troopers, and we're able to apply it in the field. And we see that working in real situations and officer-involved shootings that we get into. So I'm super thankful for these guys. I thank you guys for coming on. I think we kind of brought that full circle from the beginning to where we're at right now. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we go?
I don't think so. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
For being here under duress, you sure did a great job.
Well, I'm sure glad Mark was here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.